Welcome to my channel, Delightful Stories. I'll be happy if you subscribe to my channel and like it. Enjoy watching and don't forget to leave your opinion in the comments about the story. What? You wanted to bring your child to work? This is not a kindergarten or shelters for the orphans and the poor to solve their problems, not at our expense. Stacy listened to this tirade and didn't have a chance to put in a single word. She suspected that this venture with the transfer of her son to work would not cause delight in her partner. He was so frightened that Stacy felt sorry for his son to leave him in the company. The angry partner was cruel, but she had no other choice. She needed to tidy up the rooms on the second floor, but you can't take your son there. It was not enough for the owner of the house to notice the named guest and give her a calculation. Stacy worked so hard to get this job. Dismissal will finish her off completely. She seated her son by the window, at the table where the cook Melissa used to cut her salads. She put the colored pencils in front of him and smiled. Be a good boy and inferior. Don't disturb Vicky's work, and I'll be there soon. Draw our cat Fluffy for me. Yes, whispered the boy. Well done, Stacy said. James seemed so frightened that in the absence of his mother, it became clear that the boy would not only not move, but he would not utter a sound, in order not to anger an angry aunt. At the sink, Stacy glared at Vicky. And why not be a little kinder with the child? What sins would not be accused of Stacy? But taking out the evil on the boy was wrong and simply stupid. What a pity that Melissa took the day off. The old cook would definitely not mock the baby and would certainly find something to do with him. Vicky was losing the sink with such force, as if she wanted to rub it to the holes. Stacy waved to her son and left. Get the job done quickly and get back to the kitchen. The girl felt that this would not end well. On this day, she set about cleaning with unprecedented excitement. First, about the vacuum cleaner. In the room of the owner of the house, Jeff. Stacy always cleaned this room first because she was creepy here like in a crypt. Burgundy wallpaper because of which the room seemed cramped and sincere. Heavy curtains do not let in a single sunbeam. Photos on the table. Stacy looked away as she passed them. The people depicted on them were long dead. Jeff's wife, children, Stacy brushed the dust off them without looking and hurried to leave. Sometimes it seemed to her that the relatives of the owner of the house blamed her for their death. And if you think about it, they were right about something. Stacy moved into Jeff's room, finished with his son's room and tiptoed past the office. The owner of the house worked with the second floor. It was possible to finish and move on to the first, and at the same time check on how James and Vicky are doing. The girl's fears were confirmed. She heard the cries of her partner as soon as she stepped down the stairs. Crooked hands cannot be left for a second. Why did you climb there? Stacy quickened her pace and almost flew into the kitchen. Just in time, Vicky loomed over the boy like a formidable fury. And, by the expression on James's face, it was clear that he was about to burst into tears. What happened? Stacy exhaled. I ran up to my son and shielded him from my partner. Vicky glared at her. Can't you see it yourself? Broke a glass. I had to leave the kitchen for a while, answer the phone. How did your little dunce stretch out his hands to the moika? Why did he go there? It was said to sit. Do not stick out in the corner. Stacy looked at the boy questioningly. He whispered, I wanted a drink. See? Stacy asked, turning to her partner. James just wanted to drink water. There was nothing criminal in his actions. Vicky almost choked with anger. How is it not? The glass is broken. Do you think the owner won't notice? Who will answer? Jeff won't count glasses. Do you know this very well yourself? Stacy said quietly. And then there are more of them, than there have ever been guests in this house. Nobody gets caught, and if they find out, you can put the blame on me. Say I broke it. But I'll go and tell everything right now. Vicky nodded. And then you take on something a lot, as I see it. You bring your child here. It's like it's a private kindergarten. He breaks dishes. And for you, everything is in the order of things, as if it should be so. You are not the mistress here. Remember? Vicky tore off her apron, lifted her head proudly, and walked out of the kitchen. Apparently, she went to carry out her threat. Stacy looked at her son sadly. That's where we got it. James, not long played in the partisans? Forgive me, Mother, the boy muttered. Stacy patted him on the head. Okay, you don't happen to anyone. Few people get such a vicious teacher. So you, my hero, hold out with her for an hour. Not everyone can. Now sit here a little longer. Quiet as a mouse. Fine. I want to see where she went, just like Stacy feared. Vicky went straight to the owner of the house in his office, where the man was sorting out some documents from work. Jeff, can I? Vicky's voice instantly changed and became different, as it always happened when she turned to her boss. Sign in, the man said dryly. Stacy waited for her partner to disappear into the office and crept closer to the door. She knew perfectly well that it was not good to eavesdrop, but she could not help herself. At stake were the two fates of her and her son. Jeff, I'm here on an important matter. You see, it has become absolutely impossible to work in this house. Why so? I litter a lot. Or Alex, something did not please you. No, what are you? Vicky hastily exclaimed. You have absolutely nothing to do with it. Such an ideal boss still needs to be looked for. I'm telling you, Stacy. What else, Stacy? Jeff asked with irritation. Vicky, you know, I have no time to solve your riddles. I have to work. About Stacy James, your maid. And what did she do? She brought her son to the house, Vicky said in a tone of complaint. Where has this been seen? To your home of some strange child. And okay still. If he behaved normally, then not without permission. He climbed into the cupboard and broke a glass. Jeff slammed something on the table. Vicky, I don't have time to listen to this nonsense. If this kid starts playing with matches and sets fire to my house, come report, and it's not worth pestering me with any nonsense. Glass you with your glasses are hiding $1 million deal for me. Vicky shot out of the office like a bullet and angrily ran away with her heels. Stacy breathed a sigh of relief. Lucky, but how long will this continue in Jeff's house? The girl felt like she was in a minefield. Everything here was a danger to her. And how did Stacy get into this situation? After all, a few years ago, everything was going well. The girl came to the city from the village to go to college. In her native Minnesota, she left an old mother. Anna gave birth to Stacy late, when she was well over 40. She brought up a lot and worked hard alone, so she grew old ahead of time. Anna had a whole bunch of diseases, and a cane bothered her joints. She could hardly move, and the garden was completely neglected. The daughter didn't make it at all. That's why Stacy didn't want to leave her mother alone. If something happens, who will help her? Mom, I won't go anywhere, she said after receiving the certificate, because I haven't seen tall buildings, factory chimneys, or traffic jams in the city. I'll stay here with you. Anna looked at her reproachfully, lost her mind. What are you going to do here? You need to study and work. Stacy waved her hand nonchalantly. You can work here, for example, as a postman. I'll get to the post office. I will distribute newspapers, romance, and fresh air. There is no romance here. In her mother, in the cold, in the mud to roam the streets. Yes, everything turns into a swamp after the first rain. And how long do you go with the mailbag if the village is dying? Farm was closed. The poultry farm is also breathing its last. They will disperse. All that will remain are 5 houses with old people, and you will not be needed with your mail. Mark my word. Mom, you are a pessimist, Stacy sighed. And what do you think I should do? Throw you here like the last traitor and drove off to an unknown place in the city? It's not that far, she said calmly. Anna, it's only an hour away. and I'm not so old yet that I don't need a nurse to look after me. You will study in the city and come to me for holidays and weekends too, if you want." "Well, why are you upset, as if we are parting for a century?" "Where by persuasion, and where by cunning." But the mother forced her daughter to go to the city. Stacy studied well at school, was considered one of the best graduates, and to stay with her abilities in the village was just stupid. Anna believed that her daughter was born for something more than just living in the country, and tirelessly persuaded her daughter to change her mind. Stacy agreed with her mother's arguments and applied for admission to the institute. The girl reasoned to herself that she would always have time to get a job at the post office. Moreover, her best friend Kate echoed her mother's persuasion. "Anna's right. What to do here?" the girl said, shaking her head accusingly. Only old people remained in the village. The House of Culture was closed. There is not even a library because there is no one to work there. Where are you going to find a groom? You will marry Grandfather Trophim and sit with him on the mound. Stacy just laughed. What suitors? Kate, what are you doing? I'm thinking about who to study. And you are already a saint to me. Not until now. A young girl. Before that, there should always be a serious matter, Kate objected to her. And where, as not at the institute, the largest selection of guys? Neither at school nor later at work, this will no longer be the case. You need to seize the moment. Stacy couldn't say that talking about guys inspired her at the village school where she studied. There were no princes or knights. Yes, and Stacy herself was a modest girl. Didn't paint brightly. Cavaliers around her were not in packs. Alan was the only one who gave Stacy attentions. A timid straight, a student forever immersed in books and talking about higher matters. Kate laughed at him. "And what did you find in him?" she asked her friend. "This is not a guy, but a walking encyclopedia. Not married to such, but to the transfer. What? Where? When? Need to go. You can die of boredom." Stacy shrugged. "I'm not going for him. We're just friends." "Oh, look. I heard that Alan, when talking with guys, calls you his girlfriend. Sounds like you're serious." This message turned out to be rather unpleasant news for Stacy. She couldn't stand it when people talked behind her back. And to come up with such stupidity, well, it doesn't climb into any gates at all. However, Alan continued to behave as usual. He did not pester her with courtship. He only pretended to be, as Kate put it, walking encyclopedia. He talked to the girl about space, talked about plans for the future, and said that he intended to become an academician. Little by little, Stacy calmed down. Maybe the guy didn't say anything like that. All of a sudden, my friend got it wrong. Whatever it was next to Alan, she was familiar and calm, as it happens with old shoes that are comfortable to walk in. Stacy continued to communicate with the guy as with an old friend. And after seeing the guy with her eyes, "Did you sew it from something? This slug won't do you any good." "It's uncomfortable somehow," Stacy muttered. "I've known him since childhood. They grew up on the same street, and now they have grown. It's time and honor to know." Said Kate, I would find myself some kind of sharpening in my glasses and would talk to her about higher matters. As if some old man does not know how to have fun at all. The friend was right. Alan plunged headlong into his studies, did not participate in any student activities, and those who went to all sorts of parties were scornfully called partygoers. "Wasting precious time," he said, shaking his head. "Well, it's better for me while everyone is drinking and dancing. I'll become a better student, turn in more papers. I will write articles, participate in competitions. Teachers will notice me. And it's close to graduate school, right, Stacy?" The girl mumbled something undefined in response. She did not take alcohol in her mouth and appeared at parties only in company with a friend. But she was not ready to study tirelessly. Sometimes after a hard day of preparation, a lot of papers were written when Stacy's head was spinning from numbers and calculations. She just needed to relax a little, forget for a while, that she was a diligent student and feel like a young girl. Kate diligently helped her in this. "Tomorrow is Valentine's birthday," she said one Saturday. "She is celebrating in the country. It's close to the city. Let's go. It will be great. If you don't want to dance, then at least we'll take a walk. The weather is wonderful, and there is a forest nearby. The river can even sunbathe." "Valentine is which of the humor?" asked Alan. Kate looked at him in surprise. "Yes. Do you know him?" "Alan, you amaze me. I thought you had no idea. What is humor, and what do people do there?" "I don't have and don't want to have," the guy said gloomily. "I really need to be interested in such nonsense. I just hear that name every day. The girls in our group are dying for him. Valentine is discussing how his new hairstyle suits him, and I saw his photo. The usual dude. There is nothing to look at in the eyes of an ounce of intelligence." "Well, of course you know better." Kate grinned and turned back to Stacy. "Well, are we going?" The girl hesitated, unable to answer. Alan warned her, "Do not even think. Let's go to the cinema. They say the war drama is out. It would be interesting to take a look. And what do you do at home with these alcoholics?" The dismissive tone with which the guy spoke decided the case. Stacy looked at him indignantly and said, "They are not alcoholics, but quite normal guys. Jeremy is fond of hiking. He walked all the mountains of Alaska. Eaton receives a second higher education in parallel, studies day and night, and Valentine himself is worthy of holding on to the girls and does not stick. Jokes are always good. You don't know anyone and you throw insults yourself. Is it possible?" Alan immediately slumped and lowered his gaze. Fine. Sorry, I was wrong. It's just, in my opinion, it's all such a frivolous living of time, songs, dances, village grandmothers. Also in the club had fun, honestly." Keith squinted slyly. "But you've never gone with us, have you? So I invite you. You will go to the Dacias to unwind. You will meet the guys. Yes, with whom they're to get acquainted." Alan waved away. "Don't tell me." Kate shook her head. "By the way, Jack Flynn is also an idiot." Flynn and Flynn. This is not a relative of the dean. The guy became interested. "Son, you see how useful it is to go to parties. You can make good acquaintances. Friendship for life." "You're right." Alan nodded enthusiastically. "I, perhaps, will go. So tomorrow. Thanks for inviting the girls. Then I will run. You need to complete the coursework." "What?" Not happy at heart. While the guy walked away with his funny, bouncing also gait, which is always in a hurry, Kate, Stacy looked reproachfully at her friend. "Why did you call him?" She herself said that he was a bore. It's more fun with such bores at parties." Kate winked at her. "Don't be upset. Come home and pretend you don't know each other. But it will be somehow bad." Stacy doubted. "I'm afraid that your friends will offend him." "That's the news." Kate grinned. She herself said that all the guys there are decent, solid boys share. Who will hurt him there? If Valentine starts joking, then the poor man from the bench will not find it enough. In any case, they won't kill him there. Kate waved it off. "Don't worry." So, in addition, you see that the person himself is satisfied. He can't wait for the dean's son to call him his bosom friend. Let's give him that chance. And they got home in the car of Margaret, one of their friends. The girl's car was a small foreign car. Alan was the only guy in the company, and he irritated everyone terribly incessantly, complained about the closeness of the stuffy air and claustrophobia. "Listen, academician," sharply threw him Kate. "Would you go then on foot?" The guy didn't get the humor. 20 kilometers. Lost her mind. Then don't complain. You wanted to meet Jack Flynn. Wanted, so be patient. You become a professor. Alan glanced at Stacy, who was sitting next to him, and sighed heavily. "I only went for you," he whispered. The girl smiled tightly. "Of course, Alan. I understood." They were one of the first to arrive for the holiday, when the guests had just begun to gather. Valentine walked out to meet them, and Stacy handed him her gift. "Hold on." The girl gave him a small box and smiled. "I congratulate you on your birthday. I hope you like it." "Thank you." The guy nodded. "I'm sure that you will like a gift from such a beautiful girl. It simply cannot be bad." The owner of the house stepped aside to meet other guests. Alan asked jealously, "What was it now? What did you give him?" Kate rolled her eyes wearily. "Calm down, Alan. There was no gold or diamonds. These are regular drinks." The boy asked in bewilderment. "This is a Buddhist figurine. Why is she to him?" "Valentine time collects such things," Stacy explained. "Everyone knows about it. So we bought to please him." "You have nothing else to do," Alan grunted and walked away. "A real bitch," Stacy sighed. "And what did I say?" Her friend grinned. "You'll see for yourself. It will be funny." The guests gradually filled the house, and the holiday was gaining momentum. They turned on the music and started dancing. Stacy took a glass with an alcoholic cocktail and watched what was happening with a smile. She liked the general revival. It distracted from the gray everyday life and excited the girl's soul. The only trouble was Alan. Just like Stacy feared, the guy relentlessly followed her and expressed his displeasure. "What kind of holiday is this?" he grumbled. Solid laughter from all sides. No one to talk to, and there is no Flynn here at all. He probably doesn't even know about this party. "Kate lied to me." "How is it not?" "They were hit by a car. A friend was right there, very much even there. You just need to take a closer look. You see those guys over there in the far corner? Flynn is among them. Go and impress him." Alan glanced suspiciously in the direction she was pointing and asked, "What are they doing there?" "Compete to see who drinks the most. So if you are a real man, show your prowess. Go, put Flynn on his shoulder blades." Alan blushed, turned pale, but did not move. Stacy stood up for a friend. "All right, Kate. He never took a gram of alcohol in his mouth. Where is he in such competitions?" "Ah, I forgot." Kate sighed faintly. "Well, nothing. Then another time you will meet Jack in a more formal setting when you both will be wearing a tie." No, I'll go," Alan muttered. "You can't miss such a chance." But forbidding everything from excitement, he began to make his way through the crowd towards the guys. Stacy tried to stop him, but in vain. He no longer listened to her. "Everything will be fine," he assured the girl. "I'll see all of them now. I have the right genes." "What about genes?" Kate asked as Alan left. "His grandfather was an alcoholic," Stacy muttered bitterly. "Didn't you know? That's why Alan doesn't like alcohol. Drinkers and the like. God, where did he go? We are not his offspring before the hostel." "Do not panic ahead of time," Kate reassured her. "You were told about the grandfather. If what you're saying is true, then Alan must have a cast iron head burst." Stacy watched the boy anxiously. Kate wanted to drag her to the dance, but the girl lost all desire to have fun. "In vain we started it," she muttered. Kate finally backed away from her. "Okay, I'm not going to persuade you. If you want, you can find me." Stacy nodded absently. The action taking place in the corner of the living room captured all her attention. The guys easily accepted Alan into their circle. He smiled stupidly, muttered something, and obviously tried to suck up to the bailiff to earn his attention. Stacy was disgusted to watch such a picture. Did Alan have no pride at all? But what about the endless speeches about the fact that he will achieve everything with his mind and become an academician? Was it all just plain chatter? The guy drank one glass, then the second, the third. The audience cheered him, and Alan barely stood on his feet and bowed to those present like an actor after a performance. Stacy tried to get through to him, to get him out into the fresh air, but then she stopped herself. Didn't he choose all of this himself? The girl was not herself. From disappointment on the street already in the evening, Stacy wanted to be as far away as possible from this crowd, from this holiday, which at first she liked so much, and even better at home in her bed with her mother by her side. There was silence in the room, and there was not a single drunken, overheated guest in the neighborhood. Here is Tolike, and it was all just fantasy. Who will take her home, or even just to the city? Kate was lost in the crowd. Stacy didn't know the other drivers, and you won't ask someone to take you when the holidays are in full swing. Wanting to distract herself, the girl went down to the garden and began to wander among the trees. The green landscape calmed her, inspired a sense of security. Stacy felt like she was at home. She felt good here. She leaned against a tree and closed her eyes. The girl had already decided that she would be able to survive this night, but her calm was short-lived. Somewhere nearby fell a sleep twig, and a drunken voice said. The girl went down into the garden and began to wander among the trees. The green landscape calmed her, inspired a sense of security. Stacy felt like she was at home. She felt good here. She leaned against a tree and closed her eyes. The girl had already decided that she would be able to survive this night, but her calm was short-lived. Somewhere nearby fell a sleep twig, and a drunken voice said. The girl went down into the garden and began to wander among the trees. The green landscape calmed her, inspired a sense of security. Stacy felt like she was at home. She felt good here. She leaned against a tree and closed her eyes. The girl had already decided that she would be able to survive this night, but her calm was short-lived. Somewhere nearby fell a sleep twig, and a drunken voice said, Look who I found. What did you forget here? Gorgeous? Everyone in the house is having fun and you are alone. Stacy barely suppressed a groan. But why did all this fall on her head? First stupid Alan entering a stupid contest. Now this girl has turned to leave. But the stranger caught her by the hand. We don't even talk. Somehow you are not polite. As I look. Now Stacy was scared for real. It was impossible to see the guy in the twilight, but the outlines of their figure he resembled a closet. Let me go, she shouted. I don't want to talk to you. Why is that? Stranger laughed. The girls never complained. Stacy jerked his hand again and somehow managed to escape. The girl hurried back to the house, to the saving light of the living room. The guy was following her. Leave me alone, Stacy screamed. The house was getting closer and closer. Behind one of the windows, the girl saw a shop, and he seemed to be looking at her. Stacy waved her hands in panic, drawing attention to herself, but the friend smiled foolishly and turned away from her. The stranger again overtook the girl with the words, Come on, let's talk. Let me not eat you. Why are you so crazy? Stacy prepared to yell, though she didn't expect anyone in the house to hear her. With this kind of music, Max, let the girl go. Someone's voice sounded from the side. I brought you here for this. Stacy looked back at the guy who came to her rescue. She saw for the first time. Though maybe not the first time. Who knows? In the twilight of the streets, the girl could only see that the guy had blonde hair and fairly regular features. The stranger holding her hand laughed. Who are you to me? Leader, educator. Get out of here before you hit me, the blond man said with a threat in his voice for the last time. The big man continued to laugh. The blonde swung well, hit him in the face. The laughter stopped. The goon, grabbing Stacy, released his victim and sat on the ground, gasping for air. Are you okay? The blonde asked sympathetically, looking at her. I think so, Stacy stuttered a little. She was trembling, but you can't tell by looking. The guy noticed. Let me take you to the house. Have a drink. Will you calm down? No, I don't want to go home. Stacy shook her head. She remembered Alan, Kate, who started all this mess, and suddenly realized that she did not want to see any of them. "Where do you want to go?" "Home," Stacy whispered, and unexpectedly burst into tears. "Well, what are you?" The blonde was taken aback. "What happened? Max hurt you?" "No," Stacy muttered. "It's just that I'm having a really bad day today. Everything fell on top of the other." "I understand." The guy nodded. "It happens to me too, so maybe we can get out of here." "What are you tired of here too?" Surprised girl. "Very much." The blonde nodded. "In addition to this bore Max, the traitor Valentine, I don't know anyone else here, so I see no reason to stay." Stacy smiled shyly. "Then, let's go." The blonde took her to the outskirts of the holiday village, where many guests left their cars. The guy's car made an impression on Stacy. She did not know much about cars, but the fact that this was a foreign car, and moreover not cheap, was evident at first sight. "I don't even feel comfortable sitting down here," she said modestly. "Everything is fine," her boyfriend reassured her. "Even Max went here, although after what he did today, he no longer shines like that. I need these passengers." "Is he your friend?" Stacy asked. The blonde shook his head. "If this is a friend of his brother, Alex asked me to take Max with him like he has depression. Let it be different. Well, he's having fun. You yourself saw how I ran after him all evening like a nanny, sometimes dragging him away from the bottles, sometimes from the girls. I'll be back home. Alex will still get me for such a passenger." Stacy laughed and held out her hand to him. "Thank you for coming to my rescue. My name is Stacy. And you?" "Nick. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself." Boiled. They drove under the track, and the girl, by force of her tongue, lost her speechlessness for a moment, and then she managed herself and took a chance. "Where are we going like this?" That too quickly," surprised Nick. "Not that word. The trees on the roadsides are blurred. There is a glitch in speed. Please, very scary." Nick slowed down to 100 and said apologetically, "Sorry, I didn't think. I always drive like this. Habit." "Are you one of these? Of the racers?" the girl asked haltingly. "Something like that," the boy smiled. "I do not like to live quietly. I'm always in a hurry somewhere. It is necessary to catch every moment, otherwise life will pass. You won't notice how you think. I think that if you drive like you drive, then life can end even faster," Stacy admitted. "It's very dangerous." "A life in general is a dangerous thing," Nick winked. "What won't you choose? You will still die as a result. So why be afraid of death to think about it ahead of time?" "And you, philosopher," said the girl. "But let's talk about something more fun. You know, it's dark now after what happened. Talking about death somehow does not warm the soul." "Goes," the guy agreed. "Then tell us about yourself, who you are, where, and how you got to today's party. You know, I was very surprised to see you in the garden, while everyone was having fun and dancing. Who was in what much? You've gone into loneliness and darkness. You don't like big crowds." The girl, thinking a little, and confessed, "No. It's probably because I grew up in the countryside. Nearby was an abandoned house. Neighbors living across from us came only for the summer. In such an atmosphere, you somehow get distracted from the noise. All this becomes simply unnecessary." Nick nodded. "I have the same. Not in the sense that I live in the countryside. No. It's just that after the death of my mother and Alex, my father completely closed in on himself. There are almost no guests in our house. So I'm used to silence. Even on the road, I drive without music. And why do we need music when there is wind outside the window?" They spent all the way behind such conversations. Stacy was absolutely enamored. She had never had such an interlocutor. Their thoughts about completely different things completely coincided. Alan never agreed with her. On the contrary, he always argued and proved his case. Kate called all this sublime reasoning nonsense. On her own, without expecting it, at a random party, she found a person to talk to with whom it was easy and simple, not choosing words and comfortable. Topics for conversation that night, she did not manage to sleep, although Nick drove her to the hostel at about 11. After listening to reproaches from Sonia, the janitor, Stacy went up to her room and lay awake until morning, looking at the ceiling and re-scrolling every phrase in my head that she and Nick said to each other. And in the morning, when the girl barely managed to doze off, the door swung open with a roar. Forcing Stacy to jump in bed, Kate herself stood on the threshold. "You look at her," angrily said a friend. I cut off the phone. I called her and she almost lost her mind. Anxiety strain. "No. Do you know that Alan and I called all the hospitals and all the morgues? Guys, they were looking for you at 0. 0 in the forest. Alan was still able to look for someone." Stacy muttered awake. "Don't joke like that," Kate said reproachfully. He, if you want to know, immediately sobered up. "As soon as I found out you were missing, and when he saw from the window how the drunken Ambal was pestering me, he immediately turned away," Stacy said, covering her knees with her hands. The girl remembered the events of the previous evening and shivered again. How could it have ended if Nick hadn't come? Drunk Ambal? Kate immediately lowered his tone and looked at her in fear. "Are you scaring me? Tell me more about what happened. I'm tired of being at home. I wanted to get some fresh air," said Stacy. "I went out into the garden and decided to take a walk, and there a drunken big man stuck to me. He grabbed his hand, wanted to take him somewhere. I started screaming. And what was he afraid of? But her excited Kate was doing it, no matter how," Stacy chuckled. "And I didn't think I fell behind only when another guy forced him. Nick came and saved me with him. I left for the city." Keith whistled in surprise. "Nick, already interesting. I know this Superman. What band is he from?" "I don't know," Stacy shrugged. "We didn't talk about studying. It looks like he's graduating from university next year. That's all I know about him." "What were you talking about, girlfriend? I don't recognize you." The Stacy I know was not herself from her studies. She would first of all ask about the education of the guy, about what is his favorite subject. That is Cinderella, it seems, is no more. Stacy smiled. "Yeah, you never cease to amaze me." Kate's friend smiled back and began to tell the details of yesterday's party. Alan, when he found out that the girl was found, also wanted to meet her, but Stacy gave him a lapel turn. "I don't want to see you anymore. I don't want to not talk to you," she said offendedly. "I first staged this performance with a drink. What do you want to say?" He beat everyone. "Great achievement. And then, when I needed your help more than ever in my life, I turned away and went to giggle with my new friends." "How does this called?" "What are you talking about?" Ala was surprised. "When did I turn my back on you?" From the guy's face, Stacy realized that he did not remember anything about what had happened. Maybe he didn't even see her in the darkness of the garden. But she couldn't back down. Anger at Alan did not want to settle down in her soul. "It's all over between us," she said, "and you don't have to follow me around and teach me how to live. Yesterday I saw that all your lessons are not worth a penny. You don't follow them yourself. So sorry, we're not friends anymore. I can't stand street people." And how Alan did not even apologize to her and almost cried. Stacy couldn't forgive him. Tried, but every time, that scene of Alan laughing in the window rose before her eyes. The traitor left her at such a dangerous moment, parting to the door of the hostel. Stacy and Nick exchanged phone numbers, but the girl could not even think that the guy would call her. At least that's how soon Nick called her the very next day and asked how she was doing. "Did you come to your senses after yesterday, after the attack on Max, or after your ride?" Stacy asked slyly. After all, at once, Nick laughed. "Long time ago," the girl replied. "So, I'm ready for new adventures," the guy remarked with satisfaction. "Be ready. I'll arrive in 2-0. Let's start making a man out of you. What do you mean? Stacy got excited. We will prepare you for any situation. Maybe even learn how to fight so she can fend for herself. If there is another bull next to me. But first, let's get used to the speed. And then you miserable 200 kilometers per hour. This impression was made as if on a roller coaster ride. On a roller coaster, probably not so scary, laughed Stacy, but I agree. Where do we start the course of a young fighter? With cycling. If you are a complete coward, then the speed of 23 kilometers for a start will be just right. Where are you going? Kate asked curiously as she watched her friend flip through her closet for the right clothes. Ride bikes, Stacy replied from the depths of the closet. No one deal. Shook her head. Kate, you haven't been on a bike since you were 10 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Apparently this guy hooked you hard since you decided to take such a risk. Stacy was really not afraid in her understanding of riding all sorts of scooter bikes and Bordeaux skateboards. It was enough extreme entertainment from which it was worth staying away. But for the sake of communication with Nick, the girl was ready for anything. They came to the embankment and rented a couple of bicycles. From the mere sight of those two-wheeled monsters, which, in her excitement, seemed to her larger than they actually were, goosebumps ran down the girl's back. Nick gave her a short briefing from which Stacy did not remember a word and looked at her carefully. Are you okay? The girl nodded confidently. In the end, they say that it is impossible to unlearn how to ride. If you've ever done this, although if you remember how many times she fell due to her inattention. So it happened now. At first, Stacy rode pretty well and even picked up speed, enjoying the warm wind. But then it caused her to lose her vigilance. The girl immediately flew to the asphalt. Alarmed, Nick dropped his bike and ran up to her. Strongly mistaken? Nonsense, help, said the girl. The knee scratches a little, but almost does not hurt. From Sir Paul, exclaimed Nick. Yes, you have a real battle wound here. Take my hand, get up. Let's go get treated. The guy's hand turned out to be reliable and warm. As he walked her to the car, he apologized nonstop. And Stacy was confused. Well, it's my own fault. I stared at a funny pug that some girl is walking. But the whole idea with bicycles was mine, Nick objected. No, I would not invite you on a date in a cafe like all normal guys do. Stacy was completely taken aback. She was flattered that Nick called their walk a date, and at the same time the girl did not know how to behave. All her dating knowledge came down to long and tedious walks with Slovaks, during which a childhood friend poured scientific facts. When they arrived at Nick's house, Stacy's panic increased even more. I'm not going to your house. Why? The guy was surprised. Didn't we leave the embankment in order to treat your wound? For this, but I thought we were going to the hospital. We sit in the hospital for 2 hours in line. Besides, my house is closer, explained Nick. Do not hesitate, Aunt Sophie understands bruises better than any doctor. You will fall into good hands. Stacy didn't know the Aunt Sophie that Nick mentioned. And that wasn't what worried her the most. To come home to the guy in the girl's memory surfaced numerous warnings that flooded her lively Kate. Do not take the word of the first person you meet. Do not go anywhere with him. And God forbid, do not cross the threshold of his house. Stacy violated all these points in turn, and as a result arrived not in an ordinary house, but in a real 3-story mansion. Nick's place was like a castle. But the girl, entering inside, did not feel like a princess at all, but Cinderella. She clearly didn't belong here. Aunt Sophie, can I have you for a minute? Nick shouted, barely going into the hall. We need you more than ever in life. Footsteps were heard on the stairs. I'm coming, said a thin, elderly woman, going down to the first floor. When she saw Stacy, she smiled affably. We have guests today. What a surprise. Aunt Sophie is not a guest, but a patient, Nick corrected her. Look at the knee. The woman drew attention to the hole that stole trousers on the wall and behind the tongue. You need to treat the wound immediately. Let's go to the kitchen. The girl went off to the mysterious Aunt Sophie. My name is Stacy. And you, Aunt Nika? The girl asked. Sophie? What is your middle name? Can you call me Aunt Sophie? The woman smiled. Actually, Sophie, am the housekeeper in this house. I have been working here for 20 years. I have known Nick and his brother Alex since childhood, so she turned into an aunt for everyone. She treated the girl's wound with iodine and applied a neat bandage. Then she smiled. That's all. You can start running again. Nick and I didn't run, but rode bicycles. Stacy corrected her and sighed. Now he probably won't call me anywhere. I disappointed him a lot. Sophie shook her head. It can't be. Trust me, I know Nick. He wouldn't bring anyone into his house if that happened. So you are dear to him? Really? She asked hopefully. Absolute. Aunt Sophie nodded to her. Footsteps were heard in the hall, and a guy came into the kitchen, somewhat reminiscent of Alan. Slim, round-shouldered, and wearing glasses. Noticing the girl, he froze on the threshold. Meet Alex, Sophie said. This Stacy. Nick's guest is already with a band. Aid, instead of a greeting, Alex said. Not at all, by the way. Noticing a band, Aid in the holes in his trousers. I fell off the bike, blushed, explained the girl. But after all, I got on the bike at the request of Nick. So the guy specified. My advice to you. Do you want to live in peace? Stay away from my brother? You will be more whole. He took a bottle of water from the refrigerator and left the kitchen. Stacy looked questioningly at Sophie. What was it? They don't get along, the woman sighed, since childhood. But why? The girl was surprised. Aunt Sophie shrugged. Different. Not too much. Nick will not sit still for a day. Everything pulls him somewhere looking for adventure. And Alex, on the contrary, is a homebody. Can you not leave the room for a week to say hello in a book? He doesn't need anything else. When the boys were small, they often quarreled over this. And now, nothing has changed. Alex just can't understand his brother. He's different, you know. Stacy didn't understand and didn't want to understand. To be honest, the girl was in love, and no other guys, except Nikita, were worth her attention. Their meetings continued, however, already without extreme sports. No bicycles. The scooter and other things were gone. Nick has come to terms with the fact that Stacy is not a thrill-seeker at all, but just a coward. Grey Bunny, as he called her. They went to the cinema. Went to a cafe several times. Went out of town, since the weather allowed. Kate was terribly jealous of her friend. That's lucky. So lucky, she said. Such a car, a house, and a face. Nick is cute, not like Alan. Everything is perfect, right? That I don't need his money at all. Stacy was embarrassed. I love Nick. And rich or poor, it doesn't matter. Everyone says so. Kate waved it off. And anyway, it's better with money, isn't it? Living in a big house is more pleasant than living in a small one. A family in a cool car will go faster than her further, and so on. Stacy darkened. Her friend looked at her and worried. Okay, I didn't mean that. I do not think that you are one of those girls who will be with a guy just for the money. I believe you, Kate. Stacy smiled. Don't worry. Something else upsets me. What exactly? Asked a friend. Do you have any kind of discord in the relationship? And you didn't tell me. And the relationship is great, Stacy muttered. It's just that I'm worried. You see, Nick loves danger so much. Fast driving, some kind of trips to the mountains where, as he said, rock climbing is done. So what? Surprised Kate. Many guys are like that. But if you do not remember Alan, but this type has always been an exception to the rule. I understand, Stacy nodded. But it's Nick. If something happens to him, I won't survive. What will happen to him? Kate was surprised. He's not the first day behind the wheel, and he doesn't often go to the mountains. At least now that he's attached to you, don't get on your nerves. In the depths of her soul, Stacy recognized the correctness of her friend and still continued to worry. Nick was in such a hurry to live, he did not take care of himself at all. Something bad must have happened to him. Premonitions did not deceive Stacy. Later, she herself fed herself for the fact that her fears but attracted trouble to Nick. Kate assured the girl that she had nothing to do with it, but that didn't matter anymore. It was impossible to change anything anyway. The misfortune happened on a gray November day when nothing good could have been expected without it. From the very morning, Stacy tried to get through to Nick, sent him a message, but received no answer. The girl was all out, spinning at her desk in the audience, and attracted the attention of the teacher. Exit to the corridor. With a stern look at Stacy, he ordered, "At my lecture, it seems to you that it is still interesting. On any other day, Stacy would have apologized and tried her best to stay in the audience. But now, she was not up to it. The girl was eager to make sure that everything was fine with her beloved. Stacy's phone rang. Before she could get out into the hallway, the teacher broke into another angry tirade, and the girl closed the door behind her and answered the call in a panic. "Hello, Nick, it's good that you called. I'm going crazy with excitement. Is it possible?" She expected to hear the soft voice of Nick, which she had long been accustomed to. She would be delighted even if he called her an alarmist or a coward. However, the voice was distributed to 6 phones. Didn't belong to the guy at all. "Is this Stacy, Nika's girlfriend?" "Yes. Who are you?" "Sophie. Aunt Sophie. I hope you remember me." "Stacy?" The anxiety grew by the second. "Where's Nick?" Frightened, she asked. "Why are you calling from his phone? What's happened?" The woman hesitated. "There is such a commotion in the house today. I decided to do an unscheduled cleaning to calm my nerves, and I heard a call in Nick's room. Looks like he forgot his phone at home 40 missed. You called again and again. I know that the unknown is very exhausting. That's why I decided to call you back. In any case, someone should have done it, reported it. And who else, if not me? Nick's father never found out about you, did he?" "About what?" Stacy asked. "Tonight Nick had an accident." Sighing heavily, the woman said, "It seems that he was going to a friend, something he needed to pick up there. And, as always, he was over the speed limit. But he's alive." Stacy screamed. "I'm sorry, Stacy, but no," Sophie muttered. "At this speed, the car on the driver's side does not survive boldly. Nick died on the spot. He didn't even suffer." Stacy dropped his phone, too, because of his weak fingers. Until I woke up and sat down on a bench. The bell sounded in the hallway. Jumping out of the office, Kate immediately rushed to her. "Wow." She shook her head. "She so bring Mr. Kowalski. He then remembered you until the end of the couple." Kate noticed the look of anguish on her friend's face. At the appointed time, she came to the cemetery and watched everything from afar. Life has lost all meaning for the girl. She did not know how to live on. A couple of months later, I realized that I was pregnant. Kate nearly choked on his champagne when he heard the news. "What a gift for the new year," she muttered. "And what are you going to do?" "Give birth," Stacy simply answered. "To give birth?" exclaimed Kate. "Alone without a husband?" "Yes." Stacy nodded. Nick was brave. He was not afraid of speed, not of height. I must be worthy of him. I also compared climbing a mountain as 1,000 times easier than giving birth and raising a child. Don't say anything. You found adventure on your head. Worst of all was the explanation with the mother. Anna did not dissuade her daughter from the decision, but it was noticeable that she was deeply disappointed in Stacy. She expected her daughter to go to the city and achieve great heights, and she turned out to be an ordinary, single mother. Nothing to say achievements. My daughter followed in my footsteps. Anna shook her head. And why do we have this family curse of some kind? Despite the attitude of close people, Stacy did not at all consider her unborn child a disaster. On the contrary, the girl was glad that she would have some kind of memory of Nick. A little later, Stacy found her guardian angel. More precisely, I found it in the market when I came there in search of fresh fruit. Stacy, is that you? Sophie said with surprise, meeting a girl among the rows. How are you doing? Oh my God, are you pregnant? Stacy nodded. From Nick? The woman asked with a voice. Of course, Sophie, Stacy smiled. I have always loved only him. Oh my God, Sophie whispered again. She doesn't seem to have any other words. She invited the girl to her house to drink tea and talk. Stacy willingly went with her. The girl badly needed communication with a man who knew Nick as well as she knew herself. Sophie came to his house when the boy was only 3 years old and treated Nick like her own son. The collection was, the woman recalled, she stirred tea from Nick's case with a spoon. The whole house was shaking, either playing a pilot or playing soldiers. Alex, then calmer, was covered in books when he kept company with his brother. He constantly lost. Nick was lively, but still a kind, good boy. If he broke something, he himself helped me clean it up. Aunt Sophie's housekeeper called me and kissed me in the morning on the cheek like her own. And now, at our house, it seems quiet, but everything somehow went wrong. Jeff, all at work. He doesn't even talk to his son. Alex also closed in on himself. He's our scientist. Science is crazy. I hardly talk to anyone except my brother. They were different. And yet, they loved each other. It's hard to say how long they stayed. So, immersed in memories. And which of these two cried more? When the tears ran out, the tea finally cooled down. Sophie asked, How are you now, Stacy? What are you going to do? You will give birth before studying. And you can't live with a baby in a hostel. I don't know myself, the girl muttered. I won't refuse a child. But what to do next? I have no idea. Probably I will have to return to my mother in the village and finish my studies later when the child is older. The woman shook her head. You can't put off something like this for later. Now it seems to you that there is still a lot of time ahead, and then things will turn you around, and there will be no time for studying. First, you will wait for the baby to go to kindergarten. Then his school problems will begin. That's what. Move over to me. I still have 3 rooms. And I live alone. The husband died. The children left. 2 of us will have more fun. And we'll look after the baby together. What are you, Sophie? Stacy exclaimed. How can I push you? It is not comfortable. I am a complete stranger to you, and you owe me nothing. I'm doing this for Nick, the woman replied. Your unborn child is like a grandson to me. How can I let his life go downhill? If everything goes well with you, then don't refuse him either. Stacy, please. This is very important to me. So they began to live together. At first, Stacy found it strange to live with a stranger. But soon she got used to Sophie and also began to consider her native. Aunt Sophie treated her like her own mother, and by the time the baby was born, they had already become inseparable. Stacy named her son James after her grandfather, who started her when she was just a baby. Sophie gladly took on the role of babysitter. And although she taught the girl how to swaddle and bottle feed the baby, she preferred to do everything herself. He looks so much like Nick. A copy will grow up. If only I could live up to those times, see what it will become. Stacy transferred to the correspondence department and after some time got a job as a secretary in a small firm that was not far from home. However, this work soon disappointed her. They paid little. The chief found fault with the slightest provocation. Stacy lost sleep and rest and began to drink sedatives more and more often. Get out of there. Sophie resolutely ordered to watch her torment. I make good money. Yes, there is a pension. Am I feeding you? No. Aunt Sophie. The girl shook her head. I won't sit on your neck. And then I still have to pay for my studies, James, to buy something. What are you going to pay for everything? If anyone needs to leave work, it's you. They themselves complained that it was becoming difficult. You don't cope, the back hurts, and the legs are no longer the same. This is where you get fired. You will stay at home to look after James. Does he love you so much? Sophie thought that it's already difficult for me to work. I can't cope. Are you my niece from the countryside? Looking for a job, but girl, after all, Jeff and I have also become like family over the years. I replaced his mother with a boy. He will listen, and you will settle into the house. The people there are good, and the owners, and the cook Melissa, and the gardener Thomas, and Vicky, my partner, is an absurd person. Well, somehow put too much with her. Do not chat, pretending that everything is in work. And everything will work out. Stacy was not afraid of this offer because she was afraid of working in the country. The girl got used to everything, but it was scary to be near Nick's relatives. Do they suddenly figure something out? Or does Alex recognize her? They did meet once. How will it look from the outside? Nick's ex-girlfriend tricked her way into the house to ingratiate herself with his family and impose her little son, and maybe even claim an inheritance. After all, according to the law, James is Nick's own son. All this is nonsense. Sophie waved her hand when the girl shared her fears with her. Anyone who looks at you will understand that you are, in essence, a pure angel. But this is already too embarrassed, girl. I'm telling it like it is. Aunt Sophie answered her. And it's not human to hide Nick's son. Jeff might have come to life. Will he find out that somewhere in the world his grandson is growing up? Stacy shook her head. I understand it. But I'm not ready to come and confess like that. Hello, I'm your failed daughter-in-law. And this is your grandson. What will Jeff think? He will probably decide that I came for money and generally thought of cheating a rich guy in order to fit into a good family. Maybe sometime later. It's up to you, sighed Aunt Sophie. But think about work. The place is good. It's a pity to miss it. Get an education, find something else. In the meantime, it would be nice in the house. She would earn money for her son. Stacy thought about it for 2 weeks until her boss's nagging became completely unbearable. Then she finally made up her mind. I thought about your proposal, and I want to try. She said to Sophie, anyway, sometime you need to get to know Nick's family better. Maybe if they are really good people, I'll introduce James to them later. It would be like that a long time ago. Satisfied, Sophie agreed. Then tomorrow I'll talk to Jeff, and on Monday perhaps I'll take you to get acquainted. And don't be afraid. So Jeff only looks stern. In fact, he is a good person. Everything turned out exactly as the woman planned. Jeff, of course, was upset when he learned that Aunt Sophie, who worked in their house for many years, decided to quit. But he didn't argue. All right, bring your niece, he sighed. If you study for her, then this is really a good girl. Stacy was terribly afraid of this meeting, but things didn't go quite the way she expected. Jeff barely greeted her. They signed some papers, and Sophie took the girl to get acquainted with the house. On the second floor there are bedrooms, an office of the owner, a guest room on the first floor. There is a kitchen, a dining room, a living room. Oh, hey, Vicky, meet Stacy. My niece came to replace me. This is to work from tomorrow. For some reason, Stacy expected Vicky to be an older woman like Sophie. But it turned out that the partner is almost the same age as her. A pretty blonde with blue eyes and a slightly arrogant look down on her. Hello, she nodded. So we will work together. She did not express any particular joy at the appearance of a new partner. Yes, Stacy smiled. I hope that we will become friends. Vicky looked at her with the deepest doubt and went about her business, so solemnly, carrying the sheets in front of her as if it were a birthday cake. Stacy looked at Aunt Sophie and noticed how unfriendly she was. I warned. The woman sighed. Nothing will do. Just keep in mind Vicky has her eye on Alex. I've been watching her and I've noticed it for a long time, so be careful. Why should I be careful? Stacy didn't understand. I don't need Alex. What they want. Necessary or not needed. He was rarely at home, but in those moments when he was nearby. Vicky was also right there. What's new at the Institute? She asked with a smile. I was writing a dissertation going. Moves little by little, vaguely answered Alex. Stacy, who was sometimes present during such conversations, hid a smile. Vicky was a half-educated student. She could not enter the Institute. I didn't go to college. It was below her dignity. However, he poured clever expressions, sometimes not even understanding their meaning. I, too, would like to become a professor, she said dreamily, rolling her eyes, or at least a teacher in a kindergarten. I have always loved teaching children how to raise children, preferably with kindness. Why resort to screaming? But the students with whom I conduct laboratory work on children are already somehow not pulling. Alex grinned. And you can't do just one caress with them. Yes, I can't even imagine how I will affectionately stroke the head of the amball, a head taller than me. Stacy couldn't help but laugh as she pictured this picture. Alex smiled too. Vicky turned pale with anger as well, looking from one to the other. I just wanted to say that being rude is not the way to go, she corrected herself. You have to teach with heart. When Alex left the living room to do some work in his room, Vicky lashed out at her partner. What are you laughing at? The idiot decided to make a fool of me in front of Alex. Stacy shook her head. Of course not. Vicky, what are you doing? I just imagined Alex stroking some thug on the head. And she couldn't resist. I can't imagine him as the good nanny. That's it, you're lying, Vicky answered rudely. What I don't see, you yourself laid eyes on Alex. So you interfere with me. You constantly climb with your own, with bags. Since then, she has been in love. Stacy even more constantly let go of some kind of jokes in her address. And then she just gave an icy silence. By then, Stacy had been working in the house for several years and had to get used to Vicky's bad temper. But this whole situation was very upsetting for the girl. And then Aunt Sophie fell ill, just like in the rain, earned bronchitis, and looked after James had no opportunity. Stacy knew that the idea of bringing her son to work would end in disaster. After listening to Vicky's conversation with Jeff and making sure that the storm had temporarily passed, the girl returned to the kitchen and was surprised to find Alex there. The guy bent over James's album and enthusiastically drew a pencil over the paper. Mom, and we draw, the boy exclaimed joyfully. I haven't done it for 100 years, Alex confessed. Now I tried it. It turned out to be very exciting. No wonder all the same psychologists recommend art therapy. Very beautiful, said Stacy, looking at the drawing. And who drew what? James pointed to the crooked bear cub. That's me. And the bunny Uncle Alex? Stacy winced at this appeal, and the man chuckled. I always drew like a chicken paw. You yourself probably in life do not distinguish where whose drawing is. Right? The rules of etiquette demanded that Stacy politely lie, and in response she said that Alex was the best artist in the world. But the girl, on the contrary, smiled. Yes, perishing heartily you not be, but it's for the best. Hate. Academic painting. Vicky looked into the kitchen, but when she saw Alex next to her partner, her eyes flashed angrily and rushed away. What was it? Alex was surprised. Do not pay attention. She's just not in the mood today, Stacy muttered. She too felt despondent at the thought of Vicky. How much longer will they squabble like a cat with a dog? Alex glanced at his watch. Okay, I have to run too. Today I'm reading an important report. A bunch of professors will gather. From this performance, one might say, my fate depends. Good luck, Stacy nodded, and she spoke with complete sincerity. She treated Alex well and believed that under other circumstances she could become his friend. Alex somehow reminded her of Alan, the same scientist, only a more subtle and intelligent person. At least Stacy couldn't imagine a situation where Alex started drinking on a bet. For a while the house was quiet and peaceful. Stacy vacuuming in the living room. Vicky did not show herself to her eyes. She was raging, probably somewhere on the upper floors. Then the kitchen bell rang. "Mom's phone is ringing," shouted James. "I hear, dear, I hear," the girl answered. "Just don't shout so loudly. Please don't forget that we're kind of playing hide and seek here." She picked up the phone and said, "Hello. Hello." The caller turned out to be Alex, wasting no time on formalities. "He's out for the territory on the phone." "Stacy, thank God you were there." "What happened?" The girl was surprised. "I had a real disaster. Long to explain, but my laptop is dead and I urgently need a replacement. Otherwise you can forget about my report." "Aren't there other laptops at the Institute?" Stacy asked. "I was let down by arrogance." Sadly, Alex grinned. "I made a fancy presentation that weighs more than all the other documents on flash drives combined. Local old laptops do not pull it." "What can be done?" asked Stacy. "If it's easy for you, take the laptop in my brother's room and bring it here. Please. Performance in half an hour, take a taxi so it will be faster. I pay for the trip. But I cannot. I have a job." The girl muttered in confusion. "What will Jeff say when he finds out I left without permission?" "I'll talk to my father. He will understand. Stacy, help me, I beg you." "Well," the girl muttered and hung up. Then she looked at her son. "James, I need to take a break." "Wait, I have here." Child with unprecedented seriousness. He nodded. "Thank you." "My good," Stacy smiled. "And remember what we talked about. Sit quietly. Don't scream or run to Aunt Vicky if she shows up. Don't even come close. I'll play stealth, okay?" James nodded again. "Okay, Mom." Entering Nick's room, Stacy experienced an involuntary thrill. She rarely cleaned. Here it was not necessary not to rearrange the sheets, not to water the flowers. And yet every time still on the threshold, it seemed to Stacy that the owner of the room was alive and that he would turn up from somewhere around the corner and smile absently at her. The laptop lay on the table, waiting in vain for the return of the owner. Stacy grabbed him, pressed him to her chest, and tagged in a couple of moments. Rushed into the street. All the way to the Institute, she mentally drove a taxi and asked the organizers of the report to wait a little and start the event later. Excited, Alex was waiting for the girl on the street. "I am your debtor. I am grateful," he said. "Thank you." Stacy watched him go and got back into the cab. The working day is over. She had to pick up James and go home. The next day got off to a strange start. Sophie still didn't feel well, and Stacy again had to take James to work with her. Vicky, who met her in the kitchen, smiled enigmatically. "I've arrived," she said pointedly. Stacy did not understand what this meant and silently walked past her. Alex was next. For some reason, he also looked into the kitchen and stopped dead in his tracks, as if he had seen the girl for the first time. "Hello?" Stacy smiled. "How was the report?" "Okay," the guy nodded. "Thank you again for your help." Contrary to his custom, he did not stay to chat with her. Some kind of amazement froze on Alex's face, dumbfounded. Stacy didn't know how to describe the feeling. At lunch, Jeff called her to his place, along with his son. Vicky added, and smiled maliciously. Stacy walked into the owner's office and had no idea. What will be discussed? Will she still be punished for bringing the child into the house? But nothing bad came of it. James did not break things, did not make noise, and did not play around. What could Jeff punish her for? The man, as always, sat at his desk in his office. Stacy entered the office and hugged her son. Vicky stayed by her side. Jeff looked at her rather not sternly, but wearily and asked, "You don't want to tell me anything, Stacy?" The girl shook her head. "It doesn't seem to be." "What's the matter?" "You are angry that I brought a child into your home." "Not really," the man muttered, not even looking at James. "It's just that every day you get more and more new rumors. Very interesting, I would say." "I told Jeff that you took the laptop from Nick's room," said a pleased Vicky, "and ran away with him from the house." "Can you explain what that means?" Stacy was about to laugh in relief. The girl wanted to answer, but Alex was ahead of her. "I will explain." He entered his father's office and stood next to Stacy. He looked seriously at Jeff and said, "Dad, this girl used to be Nick's fiancée, and her son is your grandson. If you don't believe me, look at the boy yourself. He is very similar to my brother and your son." Vicky had such a dumbfounded look, as if she had been rolled up by a tub of water. Stacy is amazed, looked at Alex. "How do you know?" she whispered. "From the laptop," Alex answered. "More precisely, from the photographs that I found on it. There was a huge archive. I dug yesterday after I read the report. I wanted to put my nerves in order, but in the end I got an even greater shock. You were the girl with the broken knee, and how did I not recognize you immediately?" They looked at Jeff, waiting for what he would say. The man looked at James, and tears slowly rolled down his cheeks. "One face," whispered Jeff. "Poor Nick in childhood. Everything ended well. Vicky quit the same day. Didn't want to stay in a house where everyone, as she said, was against her. Jeff did not want to part with his grandson, and kept asking and asking Stacy, how did she live all these years?" Of course, the girl did not remain their housekeeper. At first, she was a good friend of the Jeff family, called her daughter, and a year later she married Alex. The young people were very close to each other. They were serious and calm. A year later, Stacy gave birth to Alex's daughter, Madeline. Sometimes she fondly remembered her first love, but she continued to move on because life, in spite of everything, flows smoothly forward, and many happy years await their family.